It was funny. A call from my daughter coming in on the computer. Sorry about that, folks. Hello and welcome to the member Q&A, this month's member Q&A. The Alliance of Independent Authors, running a little late this morning. I'm Orna Ross here with you to answer our members' questions about self-publishing, writing, editing, producing, distributing, marketing, promoting books, and with, as ever, the wonderful Michael LaRonn, who has been working on your questions with me this month. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Orna. Happy March.
Happy March. How are we here? We're in the middle of self-publishing conference prep, of course. It's the conference tomorrow, hence the kind of slightly late appearance. How are you?
I'm great.
That's good.
Plugging along as ever.
You're looking nice and calm over there. We're in pre-conference flurry. But anyway, let us get to our members' questions this month. We've got some real good questions, I think, that a lot of people are going to find very relevant.
We do. And I like to insert a question of my own. This is kind of a show first, Orna. I know that with all of this COVID-19 stuff going on, I know that there's some uncertainty and people are a little nervous about that, about how that's going to impact publishing. What are your thoughts on things that writers, ALLi members specifically, can do to prepare themselves for whatever might be coming?
Wow, that's a big one to throw at me, Michael. I wasn't expecting this one. Well, yeah, I mean, these are anxious times for a lot of people. And I think, we are very lucky to be writers in the sense that we are able to express our anxiety and we have ways to, and everything in research shows that expression is hugely important when it comes to things like this. So it's not so much the fear itself that can be damaging personally and psychologically for people, so much as pent up, unexpressed, ruminatory fears that kind of go round and round and go nowhere. Mm-hmm. So the first thing to say is, I think that if you are feeling anxious, to give that expression in your writing. Secondly, I think it makes a lot of sense to work with the people who are trying to limit the spread of this. There is no containing this virus. This virus is out there. It's going to spread. But our governments are attempting to, and in different ways around the world, are attempting to, we won't get into that, but are attempting to contain the virus by essentially staying home and minimizing your contact with other people. So, of course, that's great for writers. So I would say use the time not to watch endless sort of TV programs about what the virus is doing and what's happening or anything else, but to actually use the time to get on with the writing, get on with the publishing, and doing what we do, because actually it's the best antidote compared to other people. This could be a good time for everyone involved in digital, because with people not doing as much live, they're going to be online more. We've just got good news here in the UK, a little bit of good news in the middle of all the bad stuff, about VAT on digital products and ebooks is being lifted.
Cool.
So yeah. So I think, digital, being online, and a good online life, chatting to your allies and other authors online, and getting on with our work is probably the best thing we can do. Any thoughts yourself?
No, I appreciate that comment, because I've gotten a few comments about it on my own personal platform, and about people asking, is this going to impact my book sales? Is it, and I just want people to be calm, and I want people to know that regardless of what goes our way, the same things are always true. Keep your head down, keep writing, stay consistent, and I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that was a good first question, because I know it's kind of the elephant in the room.
Absolutely.
So our next question is from Marilyn, and Marilyn asks, where can I find ALLi's Watchdog list of service providers? How do I vet a service provider that may not be listed in the directory?
Okay. So just the straightforward answer is selfpublishingadvice.org/watchdog will take you to the Watchdog desk. And there are a few different services there under the Watchdog. So there is the listing of all the companies. There are all the ALLi members that have been approved and rated by the Watchdog desk. There are other recommended services who are not actually members either yet or for various reasons. And then there are the mixed sort of services, the ones to approach with caution. And then there's Watchdog Advisory, which are the people to kind of stay away from. If there is a particular service that you're interested in and it's not listed, and that's very possible because there are new services coming on board all the time. Also, it's a big wide world out there. We can't be all over everything all at once. Please do be in touch with us and let us know whether you've had. We always ask people to get in touch if they've had exceptionally good or exceptionally bad dealings with any service. But we also have our book, Choosing a Self-Publishing Service. It's being renamed, actually, Choosing the Best Self-Publishing Service for You. And that gives you a few chapters on how to assess any service yourself so that you actually get the skills whereby you can look at a service's website. You know what to look for. Very often for authors, it's not so much even what's there as what's not there that you need to be aware of. So all of that is available in John Doppler's brilliant book, Choosing a Self-Publishing Service.
All right, great. Our next question is from Graham. And Graham asks a really great question, but it's just maybe unfortunate timing on our part, but we still want to answer it. Maybe it'd be good for next year. His question is it worth entering my book for the London Book Fair showcase?
Yeah, and let's expand it out to other fairs. We've got Book Expo coming up and Frankfurt Book Fair at the end of the year, and then there are all the book fairs all around the world. So there's always basically a book fair on the go, and there are always services offering to bring your book to the fairs. So we bring, just specifically on London Book Fair, ALLi generally takes a stand and we showcase our members' books at the fair. We do not charge for that service. The member just has to either send us the book or come along and bring their books and display them. And we do that because there are rights buyers there who take an interest in ALLi and our members and what they're up to, and know that members of ALLi are concerned with excellence in their publishing and are ethical authors and so on. But we don't charge for it, and other services do. And why don't we? Well, we don't charge for services generally, but because really rights buyers, the chances of actually getting an agent or a publisher, a rights buyer at a fair to pick up your book and go from there and take it and publish it is very, very, very slim. It is so slim as to be almost non-existent, really. Most rights professionals who are attending the fair have pre-booked meetings with people. Most of the deals that are done at the fair are actually done weeks or months in advance. They're only announced at the fairs. So it's a very, very low chance. There are companies charging $200, $300, $400 to showcase a book at the fair. I would say no, it's not a good use of your money. There are things you could do that are a lot more valuable.
Yep. All right. We have another conference-related question. Samantha asks, does ALLi offer discounts for various worldwide conferences? Her question specifically was referring to the one-day self-publishing conference at the University of Leicester in April, but I think it's a broader question that we can also answer from a worldwide perspective.
Generally, we have some is the way to say it. It's a bit like the answer to the question on the services. We can't be all over everything at all times. So where we have an ambassador and they're in touch with the conference that's going on locally in those territories, we often do get discounts. Actually, that University of Leicester, it's how you pronounce it. I know English town names are impossible, but you wouldn't think it was Leicester, but that's how it's pronounced. that's run by a partner member, Matador Books, and so I'm sure we could organise a discount there, though we haven't, but we will take a look at that now. So if it's brought to our attention, we're very happy to see if we can make that happen, and very often we can do, but we're not actively going out chasing every conference around the world to get discounts because, well, yeah, for obvious reasons.
Yep, perfect. All right. So Sarah asks a rights question. So she's got a very specific situation. So I'm going to read this. A strange and hypothetical question that came to me while listening to your Q&A. If you sold translation rights for your book, let's say in German, and after a set time, those rights reverted back to you, and you decided to publish that book in German yourself as the author, could you essentially copy and paste the German translation that the previous rights buyer did for your book and reformat it and publish it under your own name, or would that lead to trouble? So that's a very specific question that she has, but I think the broader question is, if I translate my book into a foreign language, who owns the copyright?
Yeah. So tricky indeed, and I think the first thing to start with here is fairness. And another writing professional like yourself, a translator, has done work to translate this book, and the publisher has tried and in all good faith, put the book out, and for whatever reason it hasn't worked out, so your rights have come back to you. So in terms of being fair to that translator, if you're going to go out there again with their work, you would, I think, owe them a conversation to start and just say what your intentions are. If they've been paid outright, an outright fee by the publisher, which is very likely, they may not expect further payment. But I think it would do you well to cover that off, because in different countries, different territories, translators own copyright. In some territories they do, and in some territories they don't. And to my memory, Germany is one where they do. Mm-hmm. So you specifically raised German rights, but I think you perhaps were asking about any rights. In some countries, you would be free in the sense you don't own the copyright to the translation, though, really. It's possibly owned by the publisher, and it may be owned by the translator. It's not owned by you. And in terms of you going out to put out what is essentially a new publication, then you have people that you are going to need to negotiate that with. Having said that, we have lots of cases where the translator has said, I got paid for that. You're an author. You're so welcome. Off you go. There are other cases where they've asked for an additional fee, and not a huge one, because they felt they're already paid. There have been cases where publishers have said, no, you can't do that, and go get your own translation. So there is no one answer to this one.
Yeah, and then, if I think you hit it perfectly on the head, and I think if you're dealing with Europe, there's also the snake in the grass of moral rights that you have to deal with as well. So there's even if you get permission at one point, it could be revoked at any time.
Yeah,
if they own the copyright.
Do explain for those who may not know that may not have an understanding of moral rights. Do you want to, our lawyer, explain the concept?
Essentially, moral rights are another bundle of rights that you have with your work. One of those is the right of attribution. You have a right to be able to say what can and can't be done with the work. It's really almost non-existent in the United States, but in the UK and continental Europe, in my understanding, it's far more prevalent. And so if you have a translator that owns a copyright to that, they're also going to have moral rights in the book. So they're going to be able to have more dictation and more say on what you can and can't do with the translation.
And I think I think because we are creatives, all of us together, and because we understand what it's like to put a lot of work and time into something, and then for somebody else to just kind of walk away with it, we understand, I think, and hope the concept of moral rights and that person's right to some sort of attribution, payment, and so on. If you're going to make money from that. That they have some sort of rights there, and what the extent of those rights to be negotiated, I think is fair.
Yep. All right. Vadim asks, What numbers matter most to rights buyers when authors sell subsidiary rights?
Um,
So, like a movie or a television show or a video game. What should your sales be? Um,
Yeah,
you know.
it's a really good question. And we actually set our entrepreneur membership around this very issue. So we spoke to a number of different rights buyers when we were deciding that we would have a separate membership for people who had reached a certain level as an indie author. Sorry, I don't know why that is tied into my computer today. It isn't normally. Anyway, sorry about that, folks. Yeah, so when we were deciding that we would have a separate membership for those authors who were making a living from writing and who were succeeding as indie authors, and it's now called our entrepreneur membership, which used to be the professional membership. When we were deciding around that, we thought about the issue of rights and as being important, and that these authors would be people that rights buyers would want to have a conversation with. So we spoke to lots of different people about what sort of number gets you excited. At what point are you interested in kind of hearing from the author? And I think the other important thing to say here is it doesn't just come down to sales figures. What you need for a rights buyer is some kind of story. So sales figure is one story that gets them interested. There may be another kind of story, like a major prize is something that rights buyers are also interested in, or whatever. But on the sales figure anyway, it was roughly 50,000 books sold in the previous 2 years. So one of the things that's important to rights buyers is that it's current success. They don't really get that excited about a book that did well 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Why? I mean, you could argue that that's not very sensible, but anyway, that's just the way it is. So 50,000 over the past 2 years, that's what we've set as our entrepreneur member figure, and 50,000 or equivalent. So obviously KU reads can count if in addition to actual book sales, in different, there might be other ways that your book has reach. So if I don't know, if there's a course or something built around it, or there might be something. As I said, they're interested in different kinds of stories. So, and if another rights buyer has been interested, so if it has sold in translation, that can also be of interest to a TV buyer. It shows that the book has reach and interest from other people. So yeah, I hope that
All
answers the
right.
question.
Okay. And then now we have the question that probably everybody came here for, and that is, what are ALLi's best book launch tips? This comes from member Daksha, who says, I would like to know more about the process and steps involved in organizing a book launch.
Okay, and Anna actually, we have a few questions which we will get to in the comment box here, and Anna has also asked, because she has had her events cancelled this week because of coronavirus, any ideas for online launch events. So I think we'll share this one because I know we both have ideas around launching. But the first thing that I would want to say about launches for indies is that it's slightly different. So in the traditional publishing world, the launch of the book, the day the book comes out, is a very big deal because you've only got a few weeks that book is going to be on the shelf and proving itself. And if it doesn't prove itself within those first weeks, then it's very quickly going to be out of the shop and new books coming in. For the indie selling directly, and the other thing in traditional publishing is, of course, your book is then gone and the next author's book is coming into the schedule. So you only get that kind of few weeks. We are not like that. We can launch, in inverted commas, promote a book at any time in that book's cycle. And I think it's very important to recognize that for a reader, the day they meet your book is the day that it launches for them. So it could be 5 years after you've written and published it, 10 years. It doesn't matter, particularly for books. Obviously, I'm talking about books, fiction and stuff like that. That's evergreen. I'm not talking about something that has topical relevance. So there are a few aspects to launch. First thing is that everything is in place. So you have to have all your sort of ducks in a row to have an effective launch in the first place. You need obviously to have really good book cover, good book description. You need documents that go around the book, a sort of a press release type thing that tells that you get a one sheet that explains what the book is about, what genre it falls into, its subgenre, its niche, who's going to be interested, any previous sort of books related to it, if it's in a series, or your qualifications as an author to write this particular book, all that sort of stuff. You need to have that present and aware, in place. And then you need to decide what your launch strategy is going to be. Is it going to be around promotions, maybe ebook discovery sites like in BookBub or Free Booksy or Bargain Booksy or those kinds of sites? Or are you going to do ads? Are you going to do an email sort of promotion, your own personal email promotion? How well are you situated for that in terms of the following that you have and the email list that you have and so on? So you need a launch plan and a checklist, and then you kind of work through it over a space of about usually 6 to 12 weeks before the book is actually going to go out there. And there are lots and lots of different ways. And I'm going to invite Michael now to talk a little bit about some of the ways in which you can get attention for the book for a launch period.
Yeah, there's some ways you can get attention. Certainly, some things that have worked for me have been to talk about it on social media, talk about the process that you're following to create the book. Something that I've done with my own platform is I have a podcast, and at first I thought it would do nothing, but I have a podcast where I just talk about what's on my mind every week. So I did that, and that was a great way to start building buzz for some of my books. But yeah, I mean, figure out what your medium is. Like, do you do better behind a microphone, or do you do better behind a camera, or do you do better, writing a blog? I think those are the top 3 areas that you can use to be consistent. But the key is consistency. So you can't just talk about your book and then don't talk about it. But you don't want to talk about your book too much, right? So that's it's kind of like a Goldilocks thing. You have to be a little careful with that. But in the very beginning, if this is your first book, you're probably not going to get any attention on it. I think it's actually far more important to lay some of the groundwork post-launch. So do you have a mailing list that's catching email addresses? Is the copy on that page good, so that when a couple people that do finally sign up for your list, do they get a good experience so that they'll buy your next book? So it's important to think about your current book, because that's super important, right? So are you going to run Amazon ads, or all the typical launch questions that you have? I think all of that's critically important, but also don't forget about that groundwork to help you with the next book, because all of that stuff starts here too.
Yeah. And I think I've just noticed Robert's question is also related to launches. So launch is the question of the month here, clearly. And he says, I have just finished my first book, had it printed and bound. It's all ready to go to market as an actual physical book. I need a professional service to launch it. How do I navigate the directory of services? So yes, we have a directory of services, and it's simply a matter of going to the marketing place, and you will find people there who will offer to launch your physical book for you at a price. But to be honest, Robert, I wouldn't recommend you to do that at this point. I don't think it's going, unless you want to do it as a party, which you are absolutely 100% entitled to do. And if you want to do it in terms of enjoying that physical experience of getting friends and family together and selling books to them, and you have a budget to do that, then that's a different thing entirely. But if you're doing it because you think that by having a physical book launch, you're going to kind of get your book out into the world and get readers for it, that's not how it works. If you think about it from a reader's perspective, people who come to that launch will buy a book because they love you. But what you're actually looking to do is build up over time a bank of readers who will love it because they love what you write. And that's
Yeah,
not
I
something you've
agree.
had the opportunity to do yet, probably on your first book. Sorry, Michael.
No, I was going to say I agree. I it's hard to recommend any kind of service that helps you put your book together like that. With all the information out there and with all the stuff that ALLi offers, you can very easily find out how to do that yourself. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to retain ownership in what you do. And it's really only in those very specific situations where someone maybe doesn't have any other publishing aspirations outside of one single book. When I would recommend that you use a service like that. That's Michael LaRonn's opinion only. Everybody is different, have their own circumstances, but you're going to be a self-published author. Learn how to do some of this stuff yourself because you're going to be better off for it in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. We always say, and this is kind of ALLi policy as well as Michael LaRonn's opinion and Orna Ross's opinion, we always say don't hire any marketing service until you've learned how to do that service yourself.
Yep.
Because marketing and promotion in publishing are unique. If you go to an editor, you know what you're going to get, and you know if you've got it, and you'll pay if you've got a good service, and you won't if you haven't. Similarly, a book cover design, similarly production, distribution, anything like that. Marketing and promotion is the only service in the world that I know of where people say, okay, give me $4,000 or $5,000. I'll do my best, but if we don't get any bites here, I'm sorry, I've done my job. You have to pay me
Yep.
anyway. And so it's really rife with danger for authors, particularly those who are budget constrained. So it's, with that $4,000 or $5,000 kept to carefully nurture a readership over time, you can get an awful lot more value. And that's what I was saying at the beginning about don't get too hung up on the launch as an indie. Think more about long-term, consistent, day by day, week by week, month by month promotion if what you're thinking about is book sales.
Yeah.
If you want a party, have a party, but know that
Yeah.
that's what you're doing.
I love your long-term comment. And just to put some context to this, if you had published a book 7 years ago, let's just say that, be honest, 7 years ago, if you published a book on a thriller novel about an epidemic or pandemic, now is a great time to start getting new covers and start remarketing that book, right? Because people are constantly probably consuming books on pandemics now with all the coronavirus stuff. So it's all cyclical. There could be a time in the future where, maybe your novel's not relevant now, but it could become more culturally relevant now. Like now is a really great time to be a post-apocalyptic fiction author. I think a few years ago, people thought, okay, well, it's kind of declining, it's kind of waning. I think we're probably going to start to see that go up. So long term, it just goes to show you that even if you have some things with your launch that aren't successful today, it's not like traditional publishing where your book is like produce. Your book can and will reach readers in the future. You just have to position it to do that.
Exactly. And we're so lucky as indies. So I think a lot of how we think about the launch comes from traditional publishing and also comes from that human need when we've done something massive, like writing a book, the need to celebrate and, not to get those things kind of confused. So we're really lucky now as indies. As Michael said, you can repackage and relaunch a book at any time. So to think about things, think about lots and lots of little launches, and each thing being, constantly having some sort of promotion on the go. I've seen how important that is. The indies who are having success are people who are constantly promoting, not kind of having a big launch and going back to write the next book, which is the rhythm of a traditionally published author. For the indie, it's very different. It's little and often, little and often, little and often.
Yep. Very true.
Okay, Russell has a question. He's off to a writing retreat in April. Lucky you, Russell. Good time to be retreating, and wants
Indeed.
to know how to make the most of it. So any thoughts there, Michael?
Yeah. First things first, stay safe and stay healthy. That's the first thing. And, try to prevent the spread of any viruses. The second thing I would say with conferences, I like to go figure out who's going to be there in advance and then figure out the people that you potentially want to network with. And then I would go there with a very specific reason. One of the mistakes I've made in the past with writing events is I've just kind of gone, and I didn't really have any reason to be there. I was just kind of there for the information, which is usually the wrong reason to be at a conference, because usually, and it's just, again, Michael LaRonn's opinion only, most conferences in person, you're going to get the one-on-one stuff that you hear on podcasts all the time, right? Like, you're not going to you might get a few gold nuggets here. What you really should be going there for is the connections that you make with people. And so if you know who's going to be there in advance, maybe see if you can connect with them in advance, just so that they know you're coming and you can figure out some sort of a meeting. I think personally, it's all about networking. And if I could go back to some of the conferences I've been to, I would have done them totally differently.
Yeah, and I think you learn from every one that you do. I'm not entirely sure what exactly, and maybe Russell, I see you're still there. You could pop it into the comment box just to tell us exactly what kind of event you're going on. But he's just saying he's aware that it may get cancelled,
Yeah.
and indeed it may. But if you have
Yeah.
planned a week to kind of, you mentioned retreat, so it's probably a writing thing that you were going to do. Keep it in place, and
Yeah.
don't not do it just because you're not traveling. And essentially, as Michael says, I think the key to anything like that is the work you do in advance to prepare for it. So you're very wise to be thinking about it now. And I guess the thing to do is set a goal for it. What do you want at the end of? There's only so much we can achieve in a week. What do you want to actually come out with at the end of that week? And to begin to, there may be things that you can do now to prepare in advance for that ultimate end goal. So if, for example, it was a productivity goal, you want at the end of that period, here we are, it's a week-long retreat, not tutored, a week
Okay.
without distraction
Okay.
to write. Okay, so it's completely
That's
alone
cool.
time. Yeah. So yeah, go anyway, Russell. Go somewhere and take that writing week. So I guess it is probably a productivity goal. You'll work on a specific chapter, or maybe you're coming towards the end of a book. Maybe you're starting a book. You've got to, without knowing exactly what your goals are, it's very difficult to say exactly what you should do. But I think, back to Michael's point, the whole idea, and indeed to your question, the whole idea of prepping for it now and of setting a very clear outcome for it, and then dividing it up. Sometimes we can think, especially if we're busy, that I've got a week off, I'm going to do this, that, and the other. And I know I do anyway. I think I'm going to do a year's work in a week. So just to carefully, so you're not disappointed at the end of the week, to carefully kind of consider what is your normal rate of production, what is reasonable for you to expect to get out of that week. And what actually physically can be done in a week, and then just prep it and plan.
Yeah, if it were me, I would be thinking, if it was a writing retreat, I'd be thinking about just trying to clear everything before and after the retreat. So like, I know this sounds silly, but like, I would be cleaning my house obsessively so that I could come home to a clean house, so that I'm not worried about that. I don't know if I'm just the only person that does that, but I mean, just trying to figure out all the things that are going to take my headspace away from the writing while I'm at the retreat.
That's
I would
great.
be trying to focus on taking care of that before I left.
That's great. And I think you've kind of made me think as well about the week you come back. So very often the benefit from a retreat is actually felt a little while afterwards. So clearing the decks a little bit so that you have some time on the far side of it, so that you can actually take whatever arises at the time. And then just, enjoy it. It's just such a precious gift to get away for a week and just be able to devote yourself completely to writing. Enjoy.
I agree. Have fun, Russell.
Okay, folks,
Right.
that is it for this month. Please do keep your questions coming into us. You can write to us anytime, info@allianceindependentauthors.org. There is also in the member zone a form you can fill with your question. We love to get your questions, and they are helpful not just to you. I hope our responses are helpful to you, but also to other authors who are out there and who have similar questions, which is why we do it in this public forum. So thank you for the questions. Thank you, Michael.
All right. Thanks, Orna. Talk to you next month.
We'll see you next month. Happy writing, everyone. Happy publishing. Bye-bye.